Hello, Fred. Good morning.
This is what life is like every day for Gary Fuerzas. He hosts a daily radio show in a troubled area of the southern Philippines.
Good morning, Kotobato. Atong isigutan karong buntagang
He
kabahin
says
sa
there have been
nakatabay
7
mabalhin
attempts on
kini
his life
sa
over the
Davao
past few
Doctors
years.
Hospital. Nakatanggap ako ng sulat na may laman na bala.
Once I received a letter with a bullet inside an envelope. I was told if I don't stop my commentaries, they'll put me in my place. It's hard to be a broadcaster here. If you don't know how to carry an issue, you will get into trouble, serious trouble.
Ayo ang investigation.
His hard-hitting show often attacks those who are in power. He considers himself lucky to still be alive.
When President Benigno Aquino took office in 2010, he vowed to solve the long-standing problems of impunity and extrajudicial killings in the country. But 3 years on, at least 22 journalists have already been killed, and not a single conviction has been made since.
In the Philippines, media ownership is widely concentrated in the hands of prominent families and businesses. As a result, majority of the news reports are considered biased and reflect the interests of the few individuals who control it. Although freedom of speech and freedom of the press are explicitly stated in the 1987 Constitution in the Philippines, the government in the Philippines is constantly criticized for failing to honor this thoroughly. Further proof of this censorship has become evident through violence against journalists.
Began in 2011. One of the deadliest non-war zones is the Philippines. Out of 77 killed journalists, 75 were murdered, primarily for reporting on political issues and corruption. In 41% of cases, journalists were tortured before being murdered, and yet in only 9% of cases was anybody convicted or prosecuted.
Presidente Aquino, ako si Edith Burgos, ang nanay ng nawawalang aktivistang Jonas Burgos. 5 taon, mahigit ng 5 taon na hinahanap ko ang anak ko. Lahat ng pwede kong gawin, ginawa ko na hindi ko pa rin siya makita. Ang pangako mo na lang ang pinanghahawakan ko na sana makita ko ang anak ko at the soonest possible time and find him alive. President Aquino, you promised. You promised. Please fulfill your promise so that the trust of the people would be restored to you.
The disappearance of Alfredo Bucal, Sherlyn Cadapan, Karen Empeño, and Jonas Burgos highlighted the continuing tragedy of human rights abuses in the Philippines.
In the past decade, hundreds of political activists, suspected insurgents, environmentalists, and journalists have been murdered, tortured, or abducted, allegedly by state security forces. These abuses occur in the context of a decades-old conflict with the New People's Army, which has also committed numerous abuses. The armed forces often do not distinguish insurgents from activists and other unarmed civilians.
Hindi niya inaalis yung kamay niya, nakaganyan talaga siya. Talagang surrender yung tatay ko. Wala kaming balita sa aking ama kung pinatay ba nila, kung sinalvage ba nila, o ikinulong nila. Kung buhay pang aking ama, ilabas naman nila, parang awa na nila sa amin.
Uniformed men abducted Alfredo Bucal from this highway on November 10, 2010. He was among the first victims of enforced disappearances under President Benigno Aquino. Since Aquino came to power 4 months before Bucal's abduction, several other cases of disappearances have been reported.
Hanggang sa ngayon, patuloy pa rin ang human rights violation dahil mayroon pa rin mga nangyayari, pagdudukot, pagpapatay.
On June 26, 2006, armed men abducted Erlinda's daughter, Sherlyn, in Bulacan, a province north of Manila. Taken along with Sherlyn was Karen Empeño. Both were students from the University of the Philippines. Both were activists. According to an eyewitness account, soldiers under the command of General Jovito Palparan, shown here at the Department of Justice during a hearing on the charges against him, were behind the abduction, torture, and rape of the 2 women.
Yung Sherlyn ay nakatali ang paa sa itaas, hubot-hubad pa. Ganun ba ang moralidad ng ating mga militar?
Wala. Dapat sana na pagbibigyan ang mga pakiusap, no, the cries of the victims, no, and I'm talking about families of victims of enforced disappearance. But the government has not listened to our cries.
Violators of human rights will be held accountable for their actions, and the state will protect, with unflagging commitment, the rights of all its citizens. The culture of silence, injustice, and impunity that once reigned is now a thing of the past.